The sinister lab result that revealed a cursed patient, a haunting discovery. As an emergency nurse, the clock ticked past midnight, the sterile scent of antiseptic hanging like a ghost in the darkened emergency room. Angela Thompson stared down at the lab result, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The numbers blurred in her vision, but it was the message scrawled in bold that froze her blood: cursed. A shiver ran down her spine. Beneath the fluorescent lights, shadows danced along the walls, twisting and turning, mocking her unease. It couldn't be true. Not here, not now. As an emergency nurse, Angela had faced the brutality of life and death so often it had numbed her senses. Yet something about this case felt different. The patient, a man found wandering the streets, wide-eyed and wild, had been admitted hours earlier, an enigma wrapped in desperation. She couldn't shake the stories from her childhood, whispers of a curse that loomed over their crumbling suburb like a dark cloud. Could it be that this patient was somehow tied to it? Her thoughts spiraled, but she forced herself to focus. Breathe, Angela, she told herself, trying to fend off the growing dread. But even as she composed herself, the walls of the hospital felt like they were closing in. Footsteps echoed in the empty corridor, although she knew she was the only one on shift. The air thickened with a weight that made her skin crawl, and she fought the urge to peek behind her. Suddenly, a chill struck her. Something was lurking just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. The intercom crackled to life, a message garbled in static. Angela, the voice croaked, sending her heart racing. She almost convinced herself it was her mind playing tricks, until she felt a sharp prick at the back of her neck. Sucking in a breath, she turned, but the room remained empty, save for the pallid glow of light. She exhaled deeply, dismissing it. She was exhausted, that was all. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the lab results marking something far darker than she anticipated, Angela clicked through the patient's records. Each click intensified her pulse, flickers of memory igniting a fear too familiar. Ghost stories traded among friends as a child started seeping back into her mind, tales of shadowy figures haunting the neighborhood, of children lost to a malevolent force buried deep within their town's soil. It all seemed so innocent then, nothing but bedtime scares. But this was real. Back at home, her son had grown more withdrawn since his father lost his job. He spoke about an imaginary friend, a figure with a menacing grin that sent chills down Angela's spine. She brushed it off, telling herself it was just a coping mechanism for the upheaval in their lives, but the more she thought about it, the more fear gripped her. And then there was their neighbor, Mr. Carter, who had once been a sweet old man. Lately, his glances seemed to linger a beat too long, his smile too thin and sharp, like a predator watching its prey. The shift ended and as Angela drove home, shadows loomed like giants, twisting the familiar into something ominous. She arrived to a silence that cut deep, her heart thudding a warning inside her chest. But her breath caught when her husband frantically called, their son was missing. Frantic terror washed over her. No, not my baby. As she raced through the door, every creak of the house echoed like a sinister laugh. The living room transformed into a nightmare, light pooling like pools of ink. She felt the shadows shift, felt their eyes on her. And then, from the darkness, a giggle split the silence, an echoing laughter that was both innocent and terrifying. "Mommy, he says I can come out and play." Angela froze. A chill settled over her, her heart slamming in her chest. She was ensnared in a twisted fable, where nightmares lived within her walls, and she feared it might already be too late. Angela stood rooted, fear gripping her like a vice. The voice from the shadows was a haunting melody, innocent yet laced with a darker undertone that sent her heart crashing against her ribs. "Mommy, he says I can come out and play." Who was he? Panic flooded her veins. "Jake." She called, her voice trembling. "Where are you?" The room offered no answer, just that sickening silence. Rushing towards the hallway, she flicked on the light. Its glow felt feeble, barely pushing back the heavy shadows. "Jake!" Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears, drowning out the sinister giggle which seemed to taunt her from the depths of the house. With each step, her instincts screamed at her to retreat, to lock the door and escape the suffocating dread. The toy chest stood ominously in the corner, its lid slightly ajar. Angela felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Moving closer, she kicked it open, revealing a jumble of his toys, but no sign of her son. Clutching the edge, she glanced around, her mind racing with frantic thoughts. If she was hunted, where was he? Just then, the laughter echoed again, and her blood ran cold. It was now louder, more menacing. "He says you can't see me who?" She shouted, her voice breaking. The house gave no reply, but the air shifted. It thickened with something otherworldly, like a storm brewing on the horizon. Angela dashed towards the kitchen, her limbs trembling. The knife rack gleamed cruelly under the light. She snatched a knife, the cool metal grounding her momentarily. "I will find you, baby," she breathed, forcing down the wave of fear threatening to drown her. As she crossed the threshold into the living room, her eyes fell on the window. It was slightly ajar, a gentle breeze swaying the curtains as if whispering secrets. Desperate, she flung it wide, the night air pouring in, yet no answers accompanied it. "Jake!" She cried again, more desperate than before. A sudden crash echoed from the bathroom. Angela spun around, her pulse racing. Was someone in there? She swallowed hard, her grip tightening around the knife as she crept toward the sound. Each step echoed too loudly in the stillness, a mocking march toward despair. The bathroom door was cracked open, revealing darkness within that swallowed the light. She nudged it open with her foot, fear engulfing her. "Jake!" She called, a choked whisper. What she saw next made her heart stop. In the bathtub, water sloshed about, reflecting the dim light, but it was empty. The rubber ducky floated on the surface, bobbing gently as if nudged by an unseen hand. For a moment, time froze, and then the darkness answered her. A shadow enveloped the bathroom, coiling around her ankles like tendrils of smoke. Fighting the urge to scream, she turned and stumbled backward, only to be met by a figure emerging from the shadows. "You're too late, Miss Angela," it whispered, the voice a chilling echo she knew all too well. The figure grinned, a malevolent smile twisting its features. "Get away from him!" She screamed, lunging forward, the knife aimed at the phantom intruder. But it merely laughed, each guttural sound tightening the knot in her stomach. "Mommy, can I come out now?" The voice slipped through her mind like a knife, another echo from the darkness. The figure dissolved, leaving behind an empty bathroom and an overwhelming sense of dread pressing down on her. Heart racing, she bolted towards the living room. Everywhere she looked, shadows became monsters, visions wavered at the edge of her consciousness. "Jake!" She yelled again, but the name felt useless in the night, a prayer unanswered. Suddenly, a shiver coursed through her body as she remembered the patient from the hospital. The cursed one. The shadows had been whispering words of warning, and she had dismissed them. Now, it was too late. A loud bang came from the basement door, the heavy sound reverberating through the house, followed by the unmistakable giggle of her son. "Mommy, Mommy! Come play!" Terror clawed at her throat. Each beat of her heart screamed what she feared the most. "What's down there?" she whispered to herself. With a deep breath, she took a step forward, driven by desperation and dread. What awaited her was a murky veil of darkness hiding truths she was terrified to uncover. She reached for the doorknob. But the door swung open, revealing a pitch-black abyss, and as she peered into the depths, the laughter grew louder, more demanding. "Come play with us, Mommy." Was she truly ready to descend into the nightmare that awaited her? As the darkness coiled tighter, a new revelation dawned that this wasn't just about finding her son, it was about confronting the curse that had been set loose, and her role in it. Were they both already trapped? Angela hesitated, her heart thudding loudly in her chest. The basement door gaped wide, revealing an inky chasm that promised neither warmth nor solace. She gripped the knife tighter, its cold steel now feeling like a pitiful comfort against the consuming darkness. The air around her buzzed with a sinister energy, thick and suffocating, as if the house itself was aware of her fear. With a forceful breath, she stepped down onto the first stair, the old wood creaking under her weight, each sound echoing like a gruesome reminder of her solitude. "Jake!" she cried, her voice somehow firmer now, though fear clenched her stomach like a vice. The giggle returned, playful yet ominously echoing, mingling with a chorus of whispered secrets from the damp walls. The first step into the basement was like diving into icy water. The darkness swallowed her, tendrils wrapping around her as she descended further. "Mommy, hurry!" Jake's voice called again, rippling through the shadows, warm compared to the cool dread that filled the space. "He wants to play." Who was he? The question pushed through Angela's mind like a thorn, spiking her anxiety. She could feel the walls closing in, the low ceiling nearly pressing against her head. Gritting her teeth, she stepped deeper into the abyss. "I'm coming." The words spilled from her throat in a fierce determination she didn't truly feel. Her senses heightened, every creak of the steps beneath her sounded deafening in the silence. Along the walls, shadows danced, flickering like malevolent specters hungry for her fear. A gust of cold air swept through, sending chills racing down her spine. It felt alive, watching her. At the bottom, she flicked on the basement light. A stark bulb flickered above, sputtering ominously before settling into a dim glow. The room was cluttered with old boxes and forgotten memories, discarded toys, clothing, relics of a life that once held no terror. They looked haunting now, twisted and warped by the darkness that filled the space. "Jake." She ventured further, calling out softly. As she moved into the room, the giggles grew louder, echoing off the walls in a taunting mockery of her search. "Where are you?" "I'm so close," and then she saw it, a shadow dart past the far corner, quick and fluid. "Jake!" she shouted, racing toward where it disappeared. The air thickened around her, a palpable pressure squeezing at her lungs. What was happening? Did he know what he was doing? The shadow re-emerged, a dark silhouette of her son standing in front of an open door at the far end of the basement. She felt a rush of relief mixed with dread. He was alive, but he seemed different. The light didn't reach him, shadow clinging to him in an unnatural way. "Mommy, come see." Jake's voice rang out, sweet yet unnerving. "He's waiting, just waiting for you." "Waiting for what?" She could barely choke the words out, the knot in her throat constricting. She took a cautious step forward, frowning at her son as he beckoned her to follow. Then, from behind him, she saw it. A figure, gaunt and twisted, stood just beyond the door. It shivered in the shadows, its eyes glinting like shards of glass reflecting deep malice. Her heart plummeted. "Jake, step back." Angela's voice rose sharply. But he just giggled and took one step closer to the figure. "You have to come play, Mommy. It's your turn now." The knife in her hand trembled as fear gripped her again. She was no longer just facing the shadows, she was confronting some entity, something that had wrapped its claws around her son. She had to save him, but at what cost? "Jake! I'm your mother. Come back to me." She lunged forward, desperation clawing at her, but the darkness surged, swallowing the light whole. Suddenly, the world spun, shadows engulfing her as the room distorted. The walls warped around her, the laughter morphing into screams that filled the air. She was losing herself, losing him. And then, silence fell. She stood alone, the darkness still swirling, but now void of laughter or calls. A single question echoed in the suffocating air. What have I done? The basement door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in a void of terror. Angela's heart raced as she felt the weight of 1,000 dark secrets descend upon her. What awaited her on the other side of that door? Had the curse truly begun? She took a deep, steadying breath, her resolve hardening. There must be a way out of this nightmare, she just had to find it before it found her first. The stillness in the basement stung with a sharpness that made Angela's skin crawl. Shadows flickered, stretching and shrinking, as if mocking her. She raised the knife, its gleam reflecting her racing thoughts. Had Jake really been with that thing? The realization threatened to drown her, but she clung to the hope that she was still in control. Jake! She called again, her voice quivering as she forced herself to move. Each step forward felt like an assault against the watching darkness. The sense of hopelessness clawed at her, but there was no way she could stand still. Not now. Not ever. As she crossed to the open door, its frame loomed like a hungry mouth. Jake, please! She shouted, stepping through the threshold. The air thickened, pressing against her with a chilling weight. The room beyond was void of the dim light from the basement, swallowed completely by a more profound darkness. The atmosphere hummed with a dreadful anticipation, vibrating around her. Each breath tasted stale and metallic, fortifying the gnawing fear curling in her gut. Something was alive in here, something that had a purpose. Mommy! Jake's voice wove through the shadows, unmistakably close, yet echoing from everywhere and nowhere. He's right here. Angela's heart jolted at the urgency in his tone. She pressed onward, squinting into the blackness. The weight of the oppressive air felt like chains binding her limbs, but she stumbled forward, every inch a battle against the unseen. Then she saw it, the faint glint of something eyes, fins like blades. A figure more horrific than she had imagined, hovering just beyond the wall of darkness. Get back! She screamed, brandishing the knife, its blade glimmering weakly in the dimness. But the figure didn't move, it seemed to relish in her fear, as if feeding off it. The laughter returned, mingled with Jake's tiny whimpers. No! Angela shouted, panic tightening around her chest. I want to let you take him. The room seemed to pulse, drawing in and out, as if it were alive. The shadows thickened, cocooning her in a suffocating embrace. She felt them touch her skin, cool and clammy, tugging at the edges of her sanity. Was this real? Or just a twisted fabrication of her torment? Mommy! Please! Jake's voice grew fainter, mingling with a chorus of whispers. He's my friend. You have to come play. Something deep within her stirred a painful knot of maternal instinct clashing with primal fear. Had she been a bad mother? Was this her fault? Every terrible thought threatened to spiral out of control, but Angela pulled herself together. No! She shouted against the echoes. I choose you, Jake. I will always choose you. And with that, she lunged deeper into the darkness, seeking her son. There was no going back now. She hurled herself toward the source of his voice, each step a plunge into obscurity. The laughter morphed into shrieks, wails of something furious, and from behind, the figure approached, its presence an overwhelming force. Let him go! She screamed, desperation blooming into raw courage. But all that met her grasp was the bitter chill of fear. Suddenly, the floor beneath her gave way, plunging her into a black void, falling farther and farther until a gut-wrenching sensation enveloped her. Angela screamed, the darkness swallowing both her sound and herself. She landed hard on something cold and damp. Everything was twisting, colors blending into one another, shadows shifting rapidly. In the distance, a piercing scream echoed a child's. Jake! She gasped, propelling herself up, dizziness swirling in her mind. Angela blinked, steadied herself, and began moving again. She had to find him, to pull him away from the malevolent thing that had him in its grasp. The uncertainty mixed with dread, clawing at her resolve. But as she turned, something brushed against her shoulder, a cold whisper tickling her ear. "You can play with us forever." The voice brought a chill so sharp it felt like ice slicing through her veins. Terror welled up again. She was never alone. The shadows were watchers, keeping her trapped. With renewed determination, Angela stumbled into the inky depths, heart screaming for her son. But what exactly had she awakened in this darkness? With each step, she felt herself drifting further from her reality, edging closer to something unimaginable. And suddenly, a looming thought pressed against her mind, a truth whispered through the darkness. "Where are you, Jake? And what will it take to bring you back?" Every flicker of movement sent a shiver rushing through her. Only time would tell if she could uncover the secret and survive the depths of despair. As the shadows danced around her, she realized that this nightmare was just beginning. The air thickened as Angela staggered forward, each breath a desperate grasp for clarity. It was cold, so cold that she could hardly feel her fingers wrapped tight around the knife. The echo of Jake's voice pulsed around her like the last flickering heartbeat in a dying body. "Yes, my friend." The words clawed at her mind, piercing her resolve. "Jake!" She shouted again, almost a plea, tears stinging her eyes. Her heart raced wildly, each thud a reminder of her frantic search. The darkness twisted around her like a serpent, coiling tighter, urging her to surrender to despair. The ground shifted beneath her, soft and yielding, and she stumbled, righting herself just before her knees hit the cold, damp surface. Angela squinted against the impenetrable blackness, searching for any sign of him. The only light was the faint shimmer of moisture on the floor. She could feel it, this place was alive. It breathed, almost as if waiting for her to make her next move. "Mommy! Help!" Jake's cry pierced through the shifting air, sharp as the knife she gripped. She wanted to scream in response, to rally her strength, but fear coiled around her throat, choking the sound. And then she saw them. Shadows skittered at the edges of her vision, darting back as she turned her head. Not just shadows, figures with twisted forms and elongated limbs, flickering like dying flames. A laugh bubbled up from the depths of the darkness, bright and cruel, mixing with Jake's frightened whimpers. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice emerged from nowhere, slithering into her mind. The darkness pulsed with a life of its own, and she fought the bile rising in her throat. "Shut up!" she screamed, swinging the knife in a wild arc, as if her fury could carve a path through the nightmare. But the figures only watched, their eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. Angela felt their gaze, cold and calculating, sizing her up as if to see how far she would go. She pressed her back against the damp wall, fortifying herself against the terrors around her. "Jake!" she cried again, urgency spilling into her voice, gaining strength from the resolve to save him. The laughter dimmed, replaced by silence that rang louder than the chaos before. It felt as if the shadows themselves had paused, captivated by her resolve. Just as the weight of despair began to lift, Jake's small voice echoed again. "Mommy, I'm scared." Panic surged through her. Her heart shattered inside her chest, he was nearby. She surged forward, driven by the primal instinct of a mother. "Where are you, Jake?" But then she felt something crawling up her legs, sliding over her skin like ice. She twisted around, swinging the knife blindly, but it was a trap. The darkness enveloped her, knotting tighter, and she staggered under the weight of it. The stench of decay filled her nostrils, and she felt a scream bubble up, clawing its way out. "No!" she gasped, realizing it was too late. Her surroundings began to bleed together, and she became lost in the charade of shadows. The figures drew closer, eyes gleaming like predators. She was no longer just afraid, she was hunted. A voice slithered through the air, silky and taunting, a soft whisper of promise mixed with a vicious threat. "Let us play a game." Her chest tightened as fury turned to dread. She forced a laugh, empty and hollow. "I want to play your game." But inside, she knew she had no choice. Suddenly, as if to check her defiance, the shadows closed in a tidal wave of blackness threatening to drown her hope. "You'll never leave." The voice faded into disquiet, and then she heard it again, faint yet unmistakable. A raspy plea rising over the cacophony, "Mommy." Angela's head whipped around, every remaining ounce of will focused on that sound. The game was no longer amusing, it had turned deadly. She could feel something monstrous closing in, feeding off her terror. With a surge of sudden clarity, she pushed through the darkness, a desperate fury igniting within her. She had no idea what she was facing, but she'd be damned if she allowed Jake to be taken from her. As she ran deeper into the inky void, something began to shift, the sinister figures began to meld into one curious form, leading her forward. There, she felt the familiar warmth of a child's hand grasping hers and a shiver of hope pierced through the gathering dread. "Jake," she whispered, feeling the life in that tiny grip. But as her eyes adjusted to the new wave of shifting shadows enveloping them, she realized that not everything is as it appears in the darkness. "Mommy." Jake's voice shook, edged with an unrecognizable fear. In the moment of recognition, a chilling realization descended upon her. Whatever held Jake was more powerful than her wildest nightmares. "Are you ready to play?" The voice echoed around them, and Angela knew she would have to face the terror ahead. The shadows quivered, closing in as they whispered tales of dread. What kind of game were they about to play? Would she lose everything? The darkness laughed, a chilling sound that twisted in her bones. "Hold on, Jake," she shouted, but the shadows tightened their grip, and she felt the walls closing in. What was waiting beyond this veil of darkness, and would she survive to find the truth? The shadows danced, no longer simply an illusion but an impending reality. The air grew denser, wrapping around Angela and Jake like a suffocating blanket. She could feel his hand trembling in hers, a small anchor fighting against the overwhelming grip of darkness. A low, mocking chuckle rose from the shadows, a sound that sent icy tendrils crawling down her spine. The very essence of the void pulsed with malevolence, swirling around them with a life of its own. "Close your eyes, Jake," she commanded, forcing the words through a throat tight with dread. The shadows seemed to revel in her rising panic, curling into shapes that gestured toward her, beckoning her to lose hope. But she couldn't. "Not now. Don't let go," she urged, clenching his hand tighter as the laughter grew louder, a cacophony of despair surrounding them. In the distance, she heard the echo of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, drowning out everything except the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. With every step forward, the ground beneath her feet felt less solid, sinking deeper into a mire of anguish and despair. She struggled against it, each movement dragging against an unseen weight. "We're going to be okay, Jake. We just have to keep moving," she whispered, but her own words felt hollow, swallowed by the encroaching night. "Mommy," Jake whispered, and she could hear the fear wrapping around his voice, knotting it like a thread ready to snap. Suddenly, the laughter shifted, more sinister, echoing with jagged edges, and she skidded to a stop. "Angela," the voice danced around them, sweet like honey but laced with poison. "Do you really think you can save him?" The shadows stretched out, forming a wall that pulsed with contempt. Angela stiffened, her instincts screaming at her to retreat. She could feel the darkness testing her resolve, poking and prodding, seeking to shatter her faith. Driven by fear, she willed herself to stand tall. "What do you want?" she shouted. "Let him go." In response, a wave of cold washed over her, and her breath hitched. For a moment, the world tilted, and the shadows swirled around her, a cyclone of chaos, whispering secrets that clawed at the edges of her sanity. "We want to play your favorite game, Angela, and the stakes are higher than you think." Panic surged, forcing her legs to move again. "Run!" she urged, yanking Jake along, but he hesitated. He looked up at her, his eyes wide, searching for comfort. She felt a crack splitting her heart wide open. "Mommy, I'm so scared." His voice was barely a whisper, but it echoed through the blackness. "Then don't let go," she cried, dragging him forward as their surroundings warped and twisted, giving birth to grotesque shapes. They moved in and out of focus, teasing her with glimpses of another reality, a place where hope still breathed. Just then, a flash of light flickered in the gloom. It pulsed like a heartbeat, briefly illuminating the figures advancing toward them. Sharp teeth glinted, and eyes like gleaming coals zeroed in on her, hungry with malevolence. They were close now, closer than they had ever been. Angela stumbled, feeling the icy fingers of the shadows rake at her legs, whispering promises of despair. "Together, we'll make you whole," they cooed. The walls were closing in, and despite every ounce of her strength, their arms grabbed at her, chilling her with their icy touch. "No! Get away!" she screamed, kicking the darkness as heavy, smoky hands grabbed her from every angle. The knife slipped from her grip, clattering to the ground in a soft echo that sounded more like a defeat than a weapon. Terror flooded her system, twisting her insides into knots. "Just a little game, Angela, just a little game," the whispers encircled her, drowning out Jake's fading cries. With sudden clarity, she tore free from the grip of the shadows, and surged forward into the expanse where the flickering light promised safety. The shadows shrieked in angry protest, throwing their weight behind her, but she had no intention of yielding. "Hold on, Jake. We'll find a way," she shouted relentlessly, hoping to ignite that spark of courage within him too. But then, an overwhelming presence loomed behind her, blocking the path of their escape. A silhouette formed, larger than the rest, with eyes that burned like funeral pyres, digging into her soul. "Not so fast," it hissed, a cruel smile splitting its face if it could indeed be called a face at all. Angela's breath caught, a rush of fear spiraling through her veins as she suddenly understood. The game was not just a trap, it was a ritual, a voracious thirst that could tear at their very essence. What had she unleashed, and how could she withstand this evil as it sought to consume them both? The shadows pulsed hungrily, inches away from her skin, eager to swallow her whole. They were right. This was no mere game. The stakes were beyond her comprehension and time was ticking away. "Run, Jake. Now!" she screamed, pushing him ahead of her as the overwhelming darkness crashed down, ready to seize what it coveted most. But as they stumbled forward, the light flickered and dimmed, and the sinister laughter cascaded around them ever closer, ever more consuming. Was escape still possible, or had hope vanished within the depths of the shadows forever? The ground quaked beneath them, the shadows convulsing with fury. Darkness twisted and slithered, hungry for their very essence, eager to drag them down into its torment. Angela's heart raced, a frantic drum in her chest, urging her forward even as dread gnawed at her insides. "Mommy!" Jake cried, his small frame nearly slipping from her grasp. She tightened her grip, her pulse matching the frantic rhythm of their escape as she pushed him ahead, each step feeling like a leap into the void. The fleeting flashes of light were their only hope, flickering in and out like a dying star. "Just a little more," she gasped, the shadows gnawing at her heels, their whispers clawing at her sanity. "We can make it." A sudden chill swept through the air, wrapping around them like a vice. The laughter rose in pitch, echoing eerily, drowning out her thoughts. "You think you're so clever, Angela? Running away won't save you." She glanced back, fear gripping her tighter than ever. The silhouette shimmered, a monstrous figure looming over them, its features a grotesque representation of nightmares. Inevitably, the shadows rallied behind their master, lunging in monstrous waves as they hissed and screeched. "Get away!" Angela shouted, hurling herself forward as if she could outrun her own terror. The light flickered again, teasing her with hope, illuminating a path that vanished into the blackness just as quickly as it appeared. "Don't look back, just keep running," she ordered Jake, who stumbled slightly, fear causing his little legs to falter. The darkness snickered, and Angela felt the hot breath of a shadow pass dangerously close. They emerged into a small clearing, a momentary escape, but the walls of black surrounded them like a noose. In this brief respite, she turned to Jake, scanning his delicate features. "Are you okay?" she panted, desperate to keep the panic that clawed at her chest from spilling over. I don't know, Mommy." His voice wavered, and the weight of his fear made her heart shatter. "We have to find something to fight with," she whispered urgently, her gaze sweeping the area. And then she saw it, a rusted pipe, jagged and heavy, glinting in the erratic light like a promise, perhaps a weapon that could give them a fighting chance. Rushing forward, Angela grabbed it, the cold metal biting into her palm. She felt an unexpected surge of power, as if the pipe carried with it the weight of her determination. "We can do this, Jake. Together." But before she could formulate a plan, the shadows roared, barreling toward them with a fury that froze her blood. "You think you can resist?" they sneered, the ground beneath her disintegrating, revealing a yawning abyss. "You'll join us soon." "No!" she screamed, brandishing the pipe with newfound resolve as the darkness converged, reaching out with elongated arms that sought to pull them under. With sheer instinct, she swung it wildly, connecting with a swirling mass of shadow. An explosion of cold energy shot through her, eliciting a howl from the very depths of the abyss. For a moment, she dared to believe hope flickered somewhere within the chaos. But then, with a swift motion, the darkness reformed, seething as it began to pull back, evolving into something even more sinister. "You play with fire, Angela," it hissed, "and the flames will consume you." She felt a chilling dread wrapping around her heart as the shadows reared back, morphing into a twisted visage of her own fears, her childhood nightmares unfurling in horrifying detail. Cold sweat trickled down her back, and desperately, she fought to cling to her son. "We need to go, Mommy. I'm scared." Jake wailed, eyes squeezed shut, hands trembling. Shadows flickered, taunting her with images of things untold, dread she couldn't comprehend. Desperation clawed at her, but she clutched the pipe tightly. "We can't give in. Not now, not ever." With renewed determination, she turned to find a way out. Just when she thought the path was clear, a wall of darkness surged forth, blocking their escape once more. The laughter filled the air, thick with malice, drowning out the slightest whisper of hope. "Time is running out," it crooned, "and soon you'll have nowhere to hide." Angela felt adrenaline spike straight to her core. There was still a chance, still a thread of hope. But with every passing moment, that thread grew thinner, stretching like a taut wire ready to snap. "Jake!" she shouted, as the walls of darkness closed in around them. "We can't stop. Move!" But just as they surged forward one last time, a flash of light blinded her, freezing time. Shadows recoiled, momentarily halted. She could barely believe her eyes. A door shimmered into view, illuminated with an otherworldly glow. "Quick! This way!" she cried, tugging Jake, heart pounding wildly as they dashed past the grasping tendrils of darkness closing in. But as they reached for the handle, the malevolent creature's voice echoed like a death knell behind them, "If you enter that door, you will regret it. It doesn't just lead to safety, it leads to your worst nightmares." Angela hesitated, caught between the glimmering promise of salvation and the threat looming just behind. What lay beyond that door? Was it hope or another layer of torment? Consumed by fear, time hung delicately in the balance. Would she dare to step through, or would the shadows claim them at last? With a trembling hand, Angela reached for the door's handle, cold metal sending shivers up her arm. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to free herself and Jake from this nightmare. But the growling shadows writhed closer, their sinister claws outstretched, whispering promises of despair and entrapment. "Mommy! I don't want to go in there," Jake protested, his wide eyes glistening with fear. Angela knelt to his level, desperation coating her words. "It's our only chance, baby. Trust me," she urged, forcing a brave smile. But inside, sheer panic clawed at her thoughts, threatening to unravel completely. Just then, the shadows stirred again, more animated than ever. They surged forward, racing against the dwindling light that enveloped the door. As the darkness thinned, she caught a glimpse of what lay beyond, a place twisted and warped, but discernibly familiar. "Get ready, Jake!" she yelled as the shadows lunged for them, the cacophony of their howling laughter drowning out her resolve. In one swift motion, she twisted the handle and yanked the door open. Bright light blinded them for an instant. Then, with an unyielding force, they were thrust into the unknown. Landslides of agony hit her like a falling boulder. As the light dissipated, Angela found herself in a narrow hallway lined with tarnished mirrors. Each reflection showed a world warped out of reality. The shadows remained, only now they raged on every surface, mocking her desperate choice. "Mommy, I want to go home," Jake cried, each word breaking her heart anew. She gripped his hand tighter, but dread wormed its way back into her core. "Stay close," she whispered. Each step felt like wading through sludge, the heavy atmosphere choking her resolve. Echoes of her own voice trailed behind them, whispering secrets and doubts. "You should have never stepped through. Look what you've unleashed." They approached a doorway at the end of the corridor. Angela felt compelled to go through, but the shadows coiled around the edges, daring her to see what lay beyond. "We have to find another exit," she murmured, trying to believe her own words. But Jake tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, wait." When she turned, the hallway behind them appeared to shift, elongating as if it were a serpent ready to strike. The shadows pressed closer, their laughter rising once more. It was a sickening symphony composed of pure malice. Angela's breath quickened, and she clutched the pipe so tightly her knuckles turned white. "We can't go back," she whispered, voice trembling. "We need to keep moving." In that moment, she sensed the shadows pulling back for a heartbeat, as if sensing a new danger was rising. Was it something she missed? "Mommy, I see something." Jake pointed, eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and horror. Following his gaze, Angela realized that what appeared to be a small glimmering object lay at the end of the corridor, seemingly untouched by the encroaching darkness. Like a lighthouse signaling the way to safety, it pulsed gently, offering a flicker of hope amid despair. But before she could decide, a loud crash echoed from the doorway. Something broke through the barrier between worlds. The shadows recoiled violently as a towering figure emerged, cloaked in darkness but with eyes radiating a blinding light. "Leave now, helpless mortals!" the figure roared, voice reverberating like an earthquake. Shadows twisted as if in retaliation, but Angela felt a pull right toward the glimmering object. "Jake! We have to go." She started toward the light, heart racing, unsure if they would be saved and unaware of what the entity was prepared to do next. With every step forward, the figure loomed closer, shadows swirling chaotically in its wake. "Your choice will seal your fate," it thundered, and the air thickened with an unearthly tension. Angela could feel the oppressive weight of time pressing against her. Would she grasp that hope, or would it lead them deeper into this nightmare? As she reached for the light, doubts clouded her mind. Was it salvation, or the very curse that awaited them all along? In that moment, everything hinged on her decision, the very moment that could change their lives forever. Angela dove for the glimmering object, each moment stretching into eternity. With Jake's little hand clinging to hers, they lunged toward the flicker of promise against the engulfing darkness. The air crackled with tension, shadows grasping at their heels, whispering torment and despair. "Mommy!" Jake shrieked, his voice rising in pitch. Angela did not dare look back at the towering figure. She could feel its malevolence like a cold breath on her neck, chilling her to the bone. "Just a little further," she urged, heart pounding like a drum. As they sprinted, the object began to take form, revealing itself to be a locket, a tarnished silver pendant etched with intricate designs. The light pulsed softly, contrasting sharply against the swirling blackness around them. Angela reached out, fingers trembling as they wrapped around the pendant. The moment she clasped it, a surge of warmth rushed through her, pushing back the shadows. Glorious light erupted, illuminating the corridor. The dark laughter quieted, but its threat lingered, shadows retreating. "Look, Mommy." Jake's little voice trembled with a mix of awe and trepidation as he watched the shadows peel away, tracing bright tendrils of fear. "We can still get out." Angela felt renewed strength wave through her. But then the shadowy figure growled again, the sound like thunder, rattling the very walls of this hellish place. "Fools! You delve deeper into despair." It warned, eyes burning fiercely, their brightness threatening to turn to ash. Angela had to think fast. She turned the locket over in her palms and saw an inscription engraved on the back, "In light, there is hope." What did it mean? In her desperation, she shook the locket furiously, almost willing the shadows back. "We need to get out. We need to find a way." She turned urgently toward the doorway at the end of the hall. "Mommy, it's coming back." Jake clung tighter, his small body trembling. The figure stepped forward, closer this time. The air thickened with dread as the shadows approached once again, circling the edges of their newfound refuge. They hissed like serpents, enticing and deriding all at once. "Use the locket." Jake's quaking voice cut through the din, the innocence of his childlike wisdom shining in that moment. "Jake," she started, but he stamped his foot defiantly. "Please. Trust it." With her child's voice echoing in her ears, grasping reflection of trust tangled with fear, Angela raised the locket, illuminating the path forward. "Light! Guide us home!" she shouted, the words growing steadier despite her internal turmoil. She pressed the locket against her chest, focusing on the warmth it radiated. "Show me the way." As if responding to her plea, the locket flared brilliantly, spilling forth waves of radiant light that cascaded down the corridor. The shadows screamed, recoiling as the light swept across them, sending shrieks echoing back into the depths from which they came. Filling her lungs with a newfound resolve, Angela pulled Jake closer, but the hallway seemed to shift again. The doorway glimmered before them, and yet the shadows clung desperate at her ankles, clawing for them, wanting to drag them back into the void. "Keep going. Don't look back." But as she ran, the world around them began to fragment, the walls shuddered violently, mirrors cracking like thunder. Reflections of other lives broke through a glimpse of somber faces, lost souls twisting amidst the chaos, and Angela felt a wrenching in her heart. A voice echoed, distant and familiar, "Angela, save us." "Mom." She gasped, the realization hitting her like a wave. Who were the souls that lingered, trapped between realms? "Mommy, faster!" Jake cried, tugging at her arm. The doorway loomed so tantalizingly now. Was it the exit or just another illusion? She had to decide. With the shadows rising dangerously, Angela pressed forward, the locket glowing fiercely in her grasp. But as they reached the threshold, a final crash resonated, shaking the ground beneath them. The towering figure loomed just before the doorway, eyes ablaze. "Your sacrifice will be eternal," it roared. And then everything shattered, light mingling with darkness in a whirlwind of chaos. Would they escape, or had they run straight into despair's final embrace? With the echoes of the past pulling at her heart, Angela braced herself for the unknown. "Hold on, Jake." As they plunged into the chaos, uncertainty hung thick in the air and around them, whispering mayhem and secrets. What awaited them on the other side? Angela's breath came in sharp gasps, her heart pounding like a war drum as she held Jake's hand tightly. The shadowy figure loomed ahead, a monstrous silhouette against the blinding light pouring from the locket. Everything felt chaotic, dizzying. Was this their end or a new beginning? "Mommy, I'm scared." Jake's voice trembled against the rising tide of darkness swirling around them. Fear twisted inside her, but she wouldn't let it bend her will. "Trust me, Jake. We're almost there," she cried, pouring every ounce of determination into her words. The shadows whispered, trying to find cracks in her resolve, but she wouldn't let them in. She pushed forward with her son beside her, each step taking them closer to freedom. As they raced toward the threshold, a deafening roar erupted from the figure. "You cannot escape your fate," it bellowed, echoing with deep malice. But the locket pulsed, radiating warmth. Suddenly, a barrier of light formed around them. Angela felt a wave of energy crash over her, shoving against the darkness. "Mommy!" Jake yelled, tugging her arm, his small face alight with fear. He was her anchor and her strength. "Go!" With adrenaline surging through her veins, she pushed forward, the glow of the locket illuminating a path through the chaos. Just as they neared the door, the shadow surged like a tidal wave, its icy fingers grasping at their heels, desperate to drag them back into the depths. "No!" Angela shouted, and with a fierce, unwavering heart, she raised the locket high, letting its light radiate in rippling waves. "It's time you let us go," Angela cried, her voice spiraling into the shadows. "We break this curse. We choose to be free." In an instant, the locket's brilliance grew, engulfing them in a sphere of incandescent light. The shadowy tendrils recoiled as the glow surged, creating a rift between the darkness and the path before them. A blinding flash erupted, and Angela felt herself and Jake lift off the ground, propelled by an unseen force. Time stretched as the light exploded outward, the shadows shrieking in fury. For a brief moment, the entire world was swallowed by radiance. And then, just as quickly, it all snapped back into focus. They were outside. Angela blinked against the brightness of midday sun, the warmth settling over her like a soft embrace. They stood in their yard, not far from home. She stumbled, clutching Jake to her chest as relief cascaded through her. They were alive. They were free. "Mommy, are we safe?" Jake gazed up at her, his voice trembling but filled with hope. "Yeah, baby," Angela replied, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clasped the locket tightly, its glow fading but still warm in her hand. "We made it." In the distance, shadows crumbled, retreating like wisps of smoke. The air was clear, a soft breeze rustling the leaves above, signaling a new beginning. The weight of the curse, whatever it had been shattered in the light. Angela knelt down, wrapping her arms around Jake, squeezing him tightly. They were safe. "I promise, I'll never let anything hurt you again. I want to let the darkness in." Jake's small body relaxed against her, and as she pulled away, she noticed a flicker of joy in his eyes. That innocent sparkle reminded her so much of everything worth fighting for. "Can we play now, Mommy?" His innocent question broke the lingering tension, lightening her heart. Angela laughed, a sweet, beautiful sound mingling with the laughter of children playing nearby, the whispers of friends and family joining them in the warm sun. "Of course. Let's go inside and make some cookies," she said, the warmth of life returning to her. As they walked toward the house, Angela felt a surge of gratitude. She turned once to look back at the yard, the haunting shadows, the darkness that threatened them. It had vanished for now, leaving behind only sunlight and warmth. It might return one day, but not today, and for today, that was enough. They entered the house together, their house, filled with memories, laughter, and safety. And as the door closed, Angela knew they had won this battle. Together, they were unstoppable. Thank you for being here with us on this journey. We truly appreciate your support for our stories. If you loved this conclusion, subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive tales we have lined up for you. Smash that like button now to keep the algorithm happy and show your love for this adventure. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and any theories you have. We want to hear everything. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important it is to keep our community growing. Let's keep telling amazing stories together.